Welcome back to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small.
I'm Paul Ogden.
We are coming to you today from Aesop's Tables at 600 East at Mass Ave in Indianapolis. It's just off downtown on the north side on Mass Ave. I mean, that's just an area.
And what's the intersection?
East Street.
It's
East
Mass, and Michigan, I think.
No, Vermont.
Vermont, a very, very beautiful state.
No. Is that Vermont? No, that's not Vermont.
We're not sure where we are exactly.
East Street.
That is
East
Street.
That is
East and
St. Clair. No?
East and
St.
Mass
Clair.
Ave.
St. Clair's over there.
No, St. Clair's anyway, north.
Anyways, we're here.
North.
But we are here. We're talking about LBGT rights with our guest panelist, Maya Axton, who's a small business owner and blogger, Annette Gross, who's state coordinator for PFLAG, and a member of the and director of the Indianapolis chapter.
No, I'm just a member.
A member, okay. And Zach, not just a member. Nobody's just a member of anything. It means you're a member.
Yeah.
And Zach Adamson, who's a member and of the city county councilor. He's a city county councilor at large.
A minor member, I would say.
Here in Indianapolis, and also a local business owner here on Mass Ave.
No, further downtown.
Further downtown. On Ohio? On Ohio Street. We got all the states covered downtown. And Aesop's Tables has a marvelous menu. You can see part of it right behind me. We were coming to you on Indiana Talks, Indiana Talks is a radio network on the internet. It's a talk radio kind of thing, or talk internet that was started by Gary Snyder in Marion and in Fort Wayne. We're carried statewide, but technically also planet-wide and on the International Space Station.
Marion's my hometown.
I'm from near Kokomo originally, so you guys were kind of like
Sister cities.
Rivalries, kind of. So you can pick us up on IndianaTalk.com, and also you can go on Indiana Talks. I'm sorry, I left out the S. IndianaTalks.com, and also on Live 365. We're talking about equal rights for LBGT people. Paul, you're wanting to address facts.
Well, and you and I had an interesting discussion about public accommodation. Where do you draw the line and those type of issues? And I brought up an issue out of New Mexico. There's a case going on where a young couple, Christian couple, photographer had a photography studio. Someone came in, a woman came in and said, "Can you come and photograph my wedding?" I think she knew that their religious beliefs, but that's neither here nor there. And when they found out that they wanted them to come and photograph a wedding involving a same-sex couple, they said, "No, we don't want to do it. That's against our beliefs." Well, they filed a complaint with the New Mexico Human Rights Commission, and this couple got fined. They got a fine. Went to the next level, which when you appeal from an administrative decision, it goes to the trial, what we normally call trial court. They lost there. They lost the Court of Appeals level. Now they're before the New Mexico Supreme Court that has decided to take their case. My suspicion is they're going to reverse that decision because there's something in the law that says laws, statutes, regulations have to make accommodation for people's religious beliefs. And this couple, and you and I were talking, and there may be some sort of distinction between a restaurant letting people in as opposed to making people go out.
Compelling somebody to do something like decorate the top of a cake.
And we had that issue here locally.
Because we had a chocolate chip shop in
Sydney. I think they were just cupcakes.
It was the cupcakes.
Cupcakes.
That was about 2 years ago.
But I don't see the difference between serving a meal to somebody and taking the photographs in that it is what you do to provide a service to the public. And if taking photos is what you do to provide that service for the public, then that is your cupcake. So whether or not it's serving a meal,
I think those are the same. To me,
I also find that a lot of people will use that religious thing to hide behind their bigotry, and I find that really disturbing.
Well, I think that there are roots in that from the 1950s and 1960s in the Civil Rights Movement in the South. Southern Baptist Church, not officially perhaps, but certainly had the effect of furthering segregation and racism in the South. And that's something that, and this is where Paul and I were talking about the other day, if you're going to use religion as the basis for protecting activity, then where do you draw that line? Because you could look at, and obviously I'm going to take the most extreme thing that you can as an example.
I know exactly what he's going
Oh,
to say.
no, cannibalism is part of a religious right in some tribes, has been historically. So you're going to say that's legal, but it's protected by
Well, no, because
religion?
you're going way too far, because that's a violation of other people's rights. Cannibalism. I mean, if you're killing people or whatever else, that's already wrong in and of itself. So, but me saying, well, I don't want to serve such and such class of people, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Oh, but
That's my right.
that
But I mean,
violates the person's right to be able to obtain those goods in a free market society.
it's if it's my property and my business, they have no rights on my property. And when they come in, I can either deny them service, I can change my prices, I can, unless I'm an actual government entity or being funded by the government, I'm open to the public, but I'm not forced to deal with all the public.
And so you
that
would
pushes
also-
things too far.
You would also say the same about people who have religious beliefs, that you should be able to discriminate against. If you were a Muslim, that you shouldn't have to serve Christians.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, when are we going to draw the line and say, well, I don't want to have to, it gets tricky, but it's called free enterprise. I mean, the free market is just allowing people to live their lives how they want to live it. As long as you're not hurting somebody and actively aggressing against them, bodily harm, stealing anything from them.
But you're hurting them emotionally and mentally.
And also physically if you're denying them housing.
Technically, my existence, our existence affects people
but
the
if
same
I
way.
walked into a restaurant and someone said to me, well, you're Jewish, I don't want to serve you, how would that make me feel? Even if they didn't touch me
But that's their
emotionally.
right.
Yes, but if you look at the history of the civil rights movement here in this country, housing was used in such a way as to prohibit people from living in areas so that people didn't have the right to live in certain areas. They were being denied the ability to exist. And it was kind of a stacking effect of different things. You can't eat here, you can't live here, you can't do this
You
here,
can't
you
go to
can't do
school
that. Yeah, and so that it had the practical effect of excluding those people from those places, and they didn't have access to some things. They didn't have access to some food.
But it's you can't use government to force people to do things they don't want to do. What I'm doing is if a business wants to be against, if they're transphobic, homophobic, and they're anti-LGBT, I just won't go there anymore. It's like people boycotting Chick-fil-A.
And I think government deciding which religious views are acceptable is totally wrong. You have to respect religious views, and the Constitution mandates.
But how
the
far do
laws
you
make
go? How
exception.
far do you take it?
Well, and also, here's another point that Paul and I covered the other day. Paul takes a position that if a religion, and I know that until the leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or the Mormons, had the revelation in 74 or 77 that African Americans really weren't bad people, they weren't the sons of Ham, that they were okay. Until then, Mormons discriminated against African Americans. After that, they didn't. So Paul's position, correct me if I'm, yes, overtly. Paul's position is that if it's a religion and they discriminate on the basis of race, that might be disgusting, but it's permissible. Am I correct?
I believe that is the law.
Whereas if
right.
a person,
I believe that's the law, as a matter of fact.
if a person though discriminates against a person on the basis of race, on a secular basis, they don't believe in God, but they believe that somebody in another race is inferior, that is not protected according to
And it should be. You're giving special protections to religious people.
I know.
And if my belief is, say, if I was Jewish, I wouldn't. I was trying to rent out half my house. I wouldn't want to have to be forced to rent it out to a radical Muslim. I mean, that's kind of insane.
Yeah.
I mean,
let me give you an example, and take it to another level. I'm Catholic, and I don't agree.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm Catholic, and we don't allow women to be priests. I don't agree with it, by the way, but that's neither here nor there. That is part of the religious faith of my religion. Are you going to say, well, let's pass a law saying they don't get a tax exemption? They're taxed because they don't.
I think
we're talking
taxed.
about. I think you're right. I think we're looking at two different things here. Again, we're looking at the way an organized religion, a church itself, conducts its business, how it handles things, how it deals with various social issues, and how a business that takes advantage of the free market society that we have, the advantages of public roads to transport customers to them, sidewalks on which their customers will walk, the system that basically helps them to promote their business, which is based on a liberty and freedom and equality basis, then it's not the same thing as a church or a religious institution. So churches having the ability to do that is one thing for religious reasons, but a public accommodation is different than a religious institution.
But why should a religious institution be able to do that when somebody on a secular basis can't do it at all? And I'm not advocating bigotry. I'm saying...
Well, I'll give you an example, and this is just from my knowledge. In the Jewish religion, for instance, rabbis may not want to marry a Jewish person to someone of another faith, and that's their right to do that.
But I understand.
That's not being bigoted. It's just the way the religion is set up.
I understand, but I guess my point was, and that when Paul's giving the example of a church could be bigoted towards a racial group, but he doesn't, and he believes that that's protected by the First Amendment and free exercise clause of the First Amendment. My point is that on a secular basis, that's giving religion an upper hand and a greater latitude than somebody who's a secular bigot. And I'm not advocating bigotry.
Exactly.
I'm saying it shouldn't be shielded by anybody.
You need to talk to the founding
agree.
fathers, our framers, as you say about that, because that's what they did when they wrote
But
the Constitution.
I think I'm leaning in agreement with him, because religion itself does sort of have a special place, although it doesn't have a place of promotion. It just says specifically that that's a special category that we're going to deal with differently than something else. So it does have, to some degree. Now, I'm Roman Catholic also, and I deviate greatly from the teachings of the church.
Well, I was baptized in the Roman Catholic Church, and I applied for the job of Pope in 1979, and I didn't even get a ding letter back from them. And if I'd been Pope right now, things would have been
You
different.
applied to be general manager of the Cubs.
I applied for that job. I did get a ding letter from
You
them.
didn't get a ding letter.
But
Not even an interview.
No, so when do we get to protect small business owners and private property rights? When do those protections get
Private
to come
property
in?
rights are different than public accommodations. And so what you do on your property with your things not open to the public, that is a private matter. But as soon as you open it up to public accommodations, that's when it
So you're
becomes
saying
a public
this
issue.
business here is not private property on the strictest meaning of the term. It is not, the business, people that own this place are not allowed to make decisions on their own. They must be approved and sanctioned by the state to do things?
Sure,
Okay,
absolutely.
so there is no
They're-
private property when it comes to business, is what you're saying.
No, I'm saying that just because it's private property doesn't mean that it's not open to the public and subject to public requirements.
And-
There are fire codes that you have to accommodate. There are a number of other things that we accommodate for things that are in the public area that you would not have to do if it was your private residence.
Well, not that I agree with those either, but you're saying human interactions, voluntary associations
We're taking a
are banned. That you can't voluntarily associate with people between consenting adults. That it should be a controlled interaction. So why are we trying to fight to get gay marriage? Because the government's just controlling the interaction. That is in the public interest, because the amount of religious crazies in this country would lose it if they legalize gay marriage. So in the public interest, it would be best to keep gay marriage banned.
No, I think you're apples and oranges there. If you and I decide that we want to have some sort of transaction, that is still different than a public accommodation.
can we do a timeout for just a second and keep that thought, and we'll be back in just a minute with Civil Discourse Now.